The tide goes out at Boston Harbor, and it leaves them behind, hundreds of them, stranded in the shallows, stacked 2 and 3 deep against the rocks. Some are as long as a man's forearm. Nobody wants them. It's 1622, and a lobster is not a delicacy. A lobster is what you eat when there is nothing else to eat. Picture a colonist crouched at the waterline, boots sinking into cold mud, staring at a creature that looks like it crawled out of a nightmare. Armored, clawed, alien. He doesn't reach for it with hunger. He reaches for it with resignation. That's the emotion at the center of this story. Not disgust exactly, something closer to shame. Here is the hidden desire beneath every early American settlement, to not look like we're starving. And here is the fear underneath that. We might be. The winters were brutal. The soil fought back. Ships from England came late, or not at all. So when the corn failed and the salted meat ran out, the colonists turned to the one thing the ocean handed them for free, in obscene abundance. Lobsters weren't fished. They were harvested off the beach, sometimes by the wheelbarrow load, sometimes so thick after a storm that they piled up like driftwood and started to rot in the sun before anyone could use them. Abundance, it turns out, is its own kind of insult. Scarcity makes a thing precious. Excess makes it worthless. Nobody prizes what's lying at their feet. By the mid-1600s, the lobster had a job, and the job was punishment. In Massachusetts, it became standard practice to feed lobster to prisoners, to indentured servants, to the poor and the enslaved. Sometimes daily, sometimes at every meal. Not as cruelty exactly, as economy. It cost nothing. It filled a stomach. That was the whole calculation. Some servants pushed back. Contracts started appearing in colonial Massachusetts and Maine that explicitly limited how often a master could serve lobster to the household help. Some accounts put the ceiling as low as 2 or 3 times a week. Imagine negotiating that clause. Imagine sitting across from your future employer and saying, "I'll work your land, I'll mind your children, but you will not feed me the thing from the mudflats more than 3 days out of 7. That's not a footnote. That's a person drawing a line around their own dignity with the only leverage they had. There's a shell midden on the Maine coast, a mountain of discarded lobster shells built up over generations at old prison and almshouse sites. Archaeologists have measured them. They're enormous. Layer after layer, meal after meal, of a food nobody chose. Sit with that image for a second. A pile of shells taller than a man, built entirely out of obligation. Every shell in that mound represents someone who had no say in what went on their plate. That's not history. That's residue. Physical proof of who mattered and who didn't, told through garbage. Nothing changed about the lobster. Same claws, same shell, same ocean. What changed was the frame around it. The turn came slowly, then all at once. Railroads reached the coast in the 1800s and started shipping lobster inland, packed in ice, to people who had never seen the ocean and had no memory attached to the creature. To them, it was novel, exotic, a little dangerous looking. Restaurants in New York started serving it on white tablecloths, charging a premium precisely because it wasn't familiar to their diners. By the time canned lobster started showing up as a luxury item and menus started charging by the pound, the origin story had been quietly erased. Nobody serving surf and turf in 1950 was thinking about servant contracts. The shame had been laundered out of it completely, replaced by candlelight and butter. Here's the part that should sit uncomfortably with you. We didn't elevate the lobster. We elevated our distance from where it came from. The same creature that once marked you as poor, imprisoned or owned, now marks you as someone who can afford the tasting menu. Nothing about the animal changed, only who was looking at it and what they'd forgotten. Next time a lobster arrives at your table, deep red, steaming, presented like an achievement, it's worth remembering the shell mounds, worth remembering the contracts, Worth remembering that the thing on your plate was once someone else's punishment, and that the line between luxury and shame was never about the food at all. It was about who got to choose.